Everybody makes mistakes in Ark, but playing on a server with other people makes me realize just how many mistakes I actually end up making on a day-to-day basis in this game. So today I thought I'd share 50 of the silliest mistakes I make in this game with you, and hopefully you can relate to them or something like that. By the way, I got this video idea from Mumbo Jumbo, so if you haven't seen that original video, please go check it out. I will link it in the description. Thank you, Mumbo Jumbo. Not having enough metal is arguably one of the most common mistakes that any player makes, but for me particularly, it's almost like a toxic trait. I always think I have enough metal. Doesn't matter how much I have. 20,000? No, that's not enough. 30,000? Not enough. It's never going to be enough. No matter what you do, it's not going to be enough. So just keep going and farming metal every single day until you die. Anytime I have a building project, I'm always underprepared for it and always have to make a billion trips back and forth between my base and my project. There's gotta be a better way. I'm sure there is. I just can't think of it. Flyers running out of stamina over a powerful or scary creature that could easily kill my flyer happens to me more often than probably anything else on this list. And I think it happens to most players too, particularly beginner players or players that are at the early end of the game. This is just one of those common mistakes that happens to everybody, and it's the worst feeling because there's no reason for it to happen. Everybody can avoid it, but we just don't. Crafting is a big part of Ark, and sometimes you only have a limited number of resources to utilize before you run out of that resource. The worst possible thing that you could do is use the last of those resources to craft something else other than the thing that you need to craft with the last little bit of those resources. Unfortunately, this is something that my tiny brain does all the time. Throwing out charcoal in the early game. Now, for some reason, I think that I don't need this charcoal. I'm never going to use this charcoal. It's only like 16 charcoal. But then I get to mid-game and I'm like, oh my god, I wish I had 16 more charcoal. I need to save the charcoal. You need to save the charcoal. We all need to save the charcoal. Hashtag save the charcoal. Speaking of being a dumbass, I often lead hostile creatures to my undefended base. For what reason? Who knows? But with a little bit of clever trickery, I usually can get myself out of it. Usually when I play Ark, I am used to having a character that is nicely leveled, has enough fortitude to handle pretty much any location at any time, and one thing that I can't seem to figure out is that my fresh character just straight up cannot handle ice and snow and volcano regions right from the start. I always want to go there. There's always great stuff there, but my character just can't handle it. I always end up with a quarter of a bar of health and having to leave. Using my last flyer to rescue another flyer that I accidentally left in a cave because I'm a dumbass. This is something that happens to me more often than I'd like to admit, and it also stems from me not having enough backup creatures, and it also happens a lot in the early game. I'm sure it happens to a lot of you as well. It's super frustrating and sketchy because if I lose that last flyer, I'm totally screwed and have to start from scratch. At this point, I can't tell if I'm just cocky or dumb, but I also underestimate creatures right in the early game. Especially since I like to go for a lot of movement speed, I always think that I can handle anything. My survivor is the best survivor that has ever walked the Ark, and nothing can stop me. However, NANI? Picking up or demolishing one of the wrong building pieces during a build, especially on the second floor, and having the rest of the build for some reason just come crashing down around you is one of the most frustrating things that can happen in this game. You're probably going to rage quit that day. I'm an advocate for a lot of movement speed because it helps with so many different situations, but there are some things you just can't outrun, like wyvern breath attacks, which I like to think I can outrun, but clearly I cannot. Forgetting that explosions can hurt friends is honestly one of my toxic traits. It's not even just a mistake at this point. Sorry, that was me.
What are you doing, man?
I'm in training. I'm in training. Another one of the 50 mistakes that I make in Ark all the time is not having enough backup creatures. Now, the reason you need backup creatures is exorbitantly abundant when you don't have enough of the backup creatures. And my base, I feel like, is the epitome of not having enough creatures. This is a mistake I make literally every time I play this game. No matter how far I get, no matter what I do, no matter where I go, I do not have enough creatures. Look at me. 1 mana? 1. You will be destroyed. Yeah, he's pissed about it. I don't think I have thalassophobia or anything like that, but when I go underwater, I completely lose all IQ points. I assume that Lazarus Chowder can last the duration of my underwater excursion, however, 9 out of 10 times it just can't. It literally does not replace scuba gear. But I like to think it does. While we're on the topic of scuba gear, I do know that it's very valuable and everybody should use it if they're going underwater. However, I am the type of guy that makes the scuba gear and then forgets it in the fabricator and has to come back before I even touch water. Of course, nobody can plan anything perfectly 100% of the time. However, something that happens to me more often than it doesn't happen to me is I run out of ammo in caves, I run out of ammo in PvP encounters. I'm just basically always running out of ammo in my turrets, so on and so forth. Whatever you can put ammo in, I am running out of it. It's lethal. Before the days of Sonoma crops, survivors had to get around caves by using grappling hooks. Of course, that means you need enough grappling hooks to get in and out of the cave. However, this is quite challenging for most people, like my friend Captain Fat Dog here, and myself included. He ran out of grappling hooks, and we basically just messed with him for 15 minutes until we were able to make a grappling hook and get it down to him. It does lead to some pretty hilarious moments with your friends, but also it had to be so frustrating for Captain Fat Dog. Anyway, watch the Monarchy series. Anybody with any experience in Ark knows that you have to pull the wood out of beaver dams. And you know what? Honestly, I'm pretty dang good at that. However, there are certain situations where I just can't pull out the wood. I was being attacked by a berry in the middle of grabbing all this cementing paste and trying to get rid of the wood, and I panicked so hard that I just flew away and forgot the beaver dam even existed. I have a habit of picking a bad starter location for my base and then having to pick up and move all the time. If you've watched any of the Monarchy series, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because I have moved bases like 3 times so far. Kind of annoying, but also really cool because it keeps things fresh in my playthrough. Speaking of bad base locations, I also tend to have really inefficient bases. Like, my stuff is kind of scattered, my chests are discombobulated, my crafting stations are far away from each other, my breeding is all over the place. Something I could work on for sure. My storage isn't discombobulated. Look how organized this is. You can find everything right away, right when you need it. No questions. Yeah, you need some tranq darts? Let me get those for you. You know what? No, make your own tranq darts. Trying to tame creatures without a trap is one of the most common mistakes that I personally make in this game. I don't know why I think these creatures are just gonna be easy knockouts without a trap, but for some reason I just continued to try over and over and over again, and I can't stop. Somebody help. I don't know if I'm just dumb or what, but for some reason I think that I can jump off of cliffs and not die. This happens to me so many times. Fall damage in Ark is brutal and absolutely unforgiving, and yet here I am continuing to do stuff like this. I feel like this one might be only unique to me, but I have a problem of deleting all single player data accidentally. I don't know how an individual can do this accidentally, because it's a button out of the way and it like gives you all these warnings, but this has happened to me so many times and I don't know how to feel about it. Not killing off low level versions of the creatures I want to tame is arguably one of the biggest mistakes I make in this game. It makes my life harder, it makes everybody else's life harder. If they want to tame high level versions of that creature, like these Allosaurus, I wanted an Allosaurus, but I just left these because why? I don't know. Don't pick on me. Every Ark player has to deal with this at some point or another, but sometimes you'll sneeze or you'll just press the wrong button and you'll whistle follow all of your dinos inside your base, outside your base, anywhere around your base where you have a lot of dinos. This can be one of the most frustrating things to deal with, especially if you're one of those people that loves to line up your dinos all perfectly, get them looking real nice. Very, very, very frustrating. Another thing I like to do is underestimate the bite range of Gigas, and this one's a stickler because boy, do they do a lot of damage. You have to do a lot of really weird stuff to get these guys into traps, and one of them recently has been using a cinema crops to lead them into the trap. This one is actually 2 mistakes in one clip because I clearly am underestimating this Giga. Speaking of underestimating creatures, I always like to think that my creatures are super badass and can handle anything. However, I quickly learned that they can't handle everything, and oftentimes I'll put them in situations that get them killed quicker than they can do anything to the opposing creature. I don't know about you, but PvP definitely isn't my strong suit, and one of the 50 mistakes that I make when it comes to PvP is thinking I can actually win a PvP encounter. Like, it doesn't matter what type of first-person shooter it is, Titanfall, Halo, doesn't matter. I am very bad at FPS games, especially with keyboard and mouse. And Ark is absolutely no different. Anytime I go up for a PvP encounter, I get clapped, and I don't know what to do about it. There's no amount of practice that can save me. This one's not so much a mistake as it is a personal choice. However, I absolutely love using assault rifles. They're absolute doo-doo, but I love going pew-pew, and who doesn't love going pew-pew? And this gun goes pew-pew. So I use them. Sometimes I'll be flying on a flyer and have to go into my inventory or step away from the PC for a moment while my creature's still flying in the air. I'll come back, think my fingers are on the keyboard right, and I'll just press E and fall off my dino, fall out to my death. Now I have to go retrieve this dino. This happens to me more times than I'd like to admit. This mistake is directly related to my inability to make good decisions in Ark Survival Evolved. You know how you'll be just like out and about traveling and doing whatever you need to do, and you'll see a great creature that you need to tame, but you'll look at your hotbar and you won't have a long neck rifle, you won't have a crossbow, you won't have a net gun, none of that, and now you're screwed. You can't go tame this thing, and by the time you have to go find it again, it's either gone, dead, or you just simply can't find it again. This happens to me more often than I'd like to admit. Failing miserably at collecting eggs, whether that's wyvern eggs or magmasaur eggs, the first one is always a killer for me. For some reason, I just can't get it right. So another mistake I make sometimes in Ark is not having enough durability on my tools. Sometimes I'll just... Yeah, that speaks for itself. So, you've just logged in for the day and you're ready to go get some metal. You jump off your cliff platform because everybody lives on cliff platforms, right? And you forget that you don't have a Sinnoh, or parachutes, or the will to keep living. Maywings are one of the best travel mounts in the entire game, but they're a bit unruly, and for that reason I always end up flying my Maywing into lava. And it could be any other glider too, Sinnohs, rock drakes, it doesn't matter. When there's lava around, the chances of me flying into it with that glider are astronomical. For some reason, remembering that creatures should have saddles during boss fights for extra defense is one of the hardest things for me to remember. And for that reason, basically every single time I do a boss fight of my own, I forget the saddles. It's one of the biggest mistakes that I make in this game, period, end of story. Since we're on the topic of boss fights, I spend so much time bringing all of my dinos and making sure they're all right, and the artifacts, that by the time I'm actually ready to do the boss, I find that I didn't even bring any of the tributes, and I have to go back to my base to go get them all. At this point, basically all I can do is hang my head in shame. Another one of the 50 mistakes I make is not leaving enough food for my baby dinos. This is something that happens a lot when you're logging off. Even in modded, you'll forget that you don't have food in this S+ nanny, or you accidentally just left spoiled meat in here, or their inventory couldn't hold all of the food that you gave them. I go through so many babies that don't need to die because I accidentally let them starve to death. Happens, I don't know, 10 times every time I play the game. All the time. Now, I am not the best breeder in the world. However, I do know that you should never leave your creatures on breeding because it gets to become this out of control mess that you just can't contain or control. While I know that, I don't do that because sometimes I just forget and you get a base that looks like all these Dodos and Deinonychus. I can't help it. I might not be the best breeder in the world, but I am pretty good at taming, or so I like to think. Even though things like Dododex exist, I still, for some reason, can't manage to bring enough trank darts or trank arrows, whatever I need to knock a creature out. Actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I'm very good at taming either, because I also can't bring enough food or narcotics to keep a creature knocked out and get them completely tamed through the entire process. Maybe I need to hire a coach. Transferring items from one part of your base to another part of your base is super annoying if you don't have a whip, and this is one of the mistakes that I make because I just never care about whips. I don't know why. They're super useful both in PvP and PvE. However, I just keep throwing stuff out of my inventory, walking around and picking it up 5 million times instead of doing the easy thing and using a whip. So another problem that I usually have in Ark is not having enough food or water for a long adventure. Sometimes you'll have to go, I don't know, 2,000 kilometers or something like that. You'll have to go really, really far. You'll have 3 food, no water left in your water canvas because they leak water, and you're not near any water sources. I mean, look how far that is. We would have to go very far to fill up our canteen. By that time, we'd probably die of dehydration. Bring food and water. So another one of the 50 mistakes that I make is not caring about breeding stats. I just took these two guys, put them together, and this is the kind of stats we get out of it. 37 weight. Who needs 37 weight on a Rex? I'd rather have 37 health or 37 melee. But you know what? I love my dinos either way. Another mistake I make all the time in Ark is throwing out high quality blueprints without actually checking them. This happens to me so much, and this is probably why I end up with primitive gear all the time, but that's kind of why I'm making this video. So another one of the 50 mistakes that I make is not having enough backup tools and armor. So I know it looks like there is some backup armor and stuff in here, but when you look at my actual armor and that it's at 310%, 369%, 388%, you'll realize that I don't have any gear like that. I have one pair of pants like that. You know what? This is a mistake I make all the time. If I didn't play on the Monarchy server, I would never have good gear ever. I'd be wearing primitive all the time because that's just the kind of player I am. Also, I never actually think about bringing tames into caves. They make the caves so much easier, but I insist on running them on foot. This has to do something with the way I played Ark in the early days. It's gotta be. What else could it be? Definitely not me being dumb. How could you say that?